How's it going, everyone? This is Kevin. Today I want to bring along with me to test out if the 35-150 has any macro abilities. So let's jump right into it. I've been asked if the 35-150 has any macro abilities, especially the 35 focal length, because that's supposedly something that they, I guess, saw. And I wanted to test it out today since we're out here in the good old, I guess, forest, if you will. It's a little state park nearby my house that has a lot of nature, and it's perfect for macro photography, in my opinion, because you want to get up close to textures. That's the only times that I really use, I guess, macro abilities. And I wanted to test out to see how well the 35-150 worked in a macro scenario for just getting textures, whether it's like leaves or, you know, the tree like barks and everything like that. And so we're just gonna go test it out. I also brought my little I guess telephoto slash macro converters things that I have to do like it's a macro extension. These right here are the ones that I have. They're just pretty cheap ones, to be honest, but you know, they should do the job themselves, just to add a little bit more macro touch to them. So worst case scenario, if the 35 focal length of the Tamron 35-150 doesn't work, we're gonna test these out. And another thing that I think will be kind of cool to compare it to is the Fuji X100F. Since it's a 35mm equivalent, I want to see how good the macro of it as well compares to the 35-150, just, you know, for comparison's sake, nothing because it's, you know, a real competitor to the lens, but that way to get an idea to see if there's much of a difference as well. Taken a couple photos so far. I have noticed straight off the bat that the 35 on the 35-150 is not the most macro friendly, but it's not as far off as it could be. The focal point of it is not too far away, but obviously using this little extension tube for macro, that just a 10mm is more than enough, to be honest, to get more macro looks. You'll be able to tell in the photos, obviously, that I've shown you. And even with the Fujifilm, I mean, you can get a little bit closer, but it's still a little bit not off like as much as the 35-150, but it's still not as macro. But so far my conclusion is that this is not as macro as other 35mm lenses that can be. I know Canon has one that's like a 35mm, maybe I think it's a 1.4 or 1.8. Correct me if I'm wrong on that end, but it's more macro, that it's actually like you can get pretty up close with it. So this one so far is not as macro as I would like it to be, but then again, I honestly don't take that many macro photos, and if I do really need to take a macro more up close kind of shot, then I can just use one of these extension tubes and probably get my results that I want to. I'm gonna try to take a photo of my eye or my face as close as possible without the macro extension tube, and then with it, and then compare them that way to see, you know, how much difference in up close can you get. You're not going to be able to get like a macro shot into the eye, obviously, like how you would want to for a macro shot maybe, but we're just going to test it out. Bam. It's going to be a little bit weird to do since I have to do it myself, so I'm going to have to use the good old flip out screen of the A7 IV, which I guess is beneficial. But let's see. My method of doing this is just like pressing the button to see it's like autofocusing, and then once it doesn't do it anymore, it's where like that's my like stop. It's not gonna be a pretty shot, that's for sure. Oh my gosh, this is horrible. I kind of don't want to show those photos, so I'm gonna try something else out first. This is as good as it's gonna get, so we're just gonna attach the extension tube and do the same thing real quick. Pretty cool. Honestly, the extension tube itself just adds a lot of macro to this lens already. So, I mean, I'm this close and it's still in focus. That like about there's where my nose stops being like super focused, I guess. Let's see. Well, you can see the pores of my nose pretty closely and everything. So that's something pretty cool. With the Fuji, I mean, we'll just kind of test it out and hope for the best. I'm gonna have to do like camera inception or else I won't know what I'm Wow, that's surprisingly how close you can get with the good old Fuji. I mean, it's not the most, I guess, ideal camera for this, but I mean, a lot closer than I thought that you could do with the 35 of the Tamron. So you learn something new every day, and this point of this whole video, we're just kind of learning together, since I've been asked a couple times about like up close portraits or macro kind of style photography with the 35-150. So this is my way of, you know, experimenting and seeing how it plays out. Hello there, General Kenobi. So another thing I want to test out just before we kind of wrap this up a little bit, it's going to be just shooting some video with it just as close as possible, and then I'll use it with the extension tube as well. I'm not going to compare the Fuji with that because it doesn't really matter. I really don't care for that one. But I'm going to test it out with the tree bark over there just to see how well I can get maybe some footage and, you know, test it out to see if it actually does some macro kind of video, or would it be better to use my like extension tube for it, or if I should just, you know, zoom in or something like that. But I know if I zoom in, the focal length, basically like the how close I can be to it, is not going to be as close. So kind of want to, you know, test out the theory, I guess. Or maybe I'll do some APS-C mode on the, you know, this camera right here in 60 frames per second. So we'll test it out. So I'm a little bit baffled by the video to photo, I guess, side of all this. I mean, I feel like the video is a lot more macro than the photography, and I'm not really understanding why, because I literally kept it without the extension tubes the whole time. I did it at the normal full frame and then the 60 FPS cropped in, which one was obviously the full frame was at 24 frames per second, since I'm shooting with the A7 IV on that end, which kind of baffled me that it was that macro and I could get that up close compared to the photo. I'm not really understanding why, but there you go, there's some finding for you. So I went ahead and just took a couple extra photos right now just to kind of see if the changing the focal kind of style might help out, and it seems like it might have helped out a little bit. I tried to take a photo of this section of plants that I'm just gonna come over here to show you. This one right here that I did with the video and then just with a photo to kind of compare to get the closer, I guess, look of it, because I don't know, I feel like that helped out a little bit more with the macro. You still can't get as close as you would want to for macro photography, but still pretty good quality. And I'm also going to show you the photo that I took of that kind of cropped in to see how well it looks with the quality so that you can see it right now. Yeah, so kind of getting to crop in with the A7 IV is a little bit nice because you do get the 33 megapixels. I don't really care to do the APS-C mode of the A7 IV because I've already done a video about that where like it's just the same thing as if you're just cropping in post, so just kind of keeping it that way. So now, what is our conclusion after today's testing and everything, being out here taking photos in good old nature? Well, the 35-150 is macro enough that you can crop in after as well, just to add a little bit more that oomph, if you will. I did like the video mode of the macro more than the photo. I think it just looked cooler to me personally, but the photo is still pretty cool. I don't really do that much macro photography, but for the people that are more macro enthusiasts, maybe this will help you out to know if you want to go with this body lens, despite of it not being fully macro. I mean, using the extension tubes that I did can help you out to get up closer, so keep that in mind for you if you're into that a little bit more, you know, up close and personal of macro. But for me, I mean, it did the job well. I think it's good enough. If I want to do more macro photography slash, like, I guess really zoomed in into somebody's maybe eye or something, I'll just use my extension tubes if and when that arises. I don't really plan to do that often, I guess, but that's just me personally. So yeah, that's pretty much it that I wanted to try to do a little bit of testing. Hopefully this was insightful for you as it was for me to kind of just put it to the test as I went about it and learn a couple things. At the beginning, it kind of just seemed off. Didn't seem that great. I even tried to do manually focusing it, but after change it to a more like spot selection kind of style of focus point, it seemed to have done better. And I like the video mode a lot nicer because you can keep it like an f2.8 and it's still focusing quite a bit on everything and giving that nice bokeh that just allows you to add more focus on what you want to do to kind of make it probably a more macro feeling. And that's my term of it, if you will. I don't really know how else to I guess talk about it in a different like perspective of it, but it just makes it feel more macro like, which is nice whenever you have the nice like blur background to just separate the subject from the background and, you know, bring it up close and personal that way. But that's about it. That it comes down to this lens. Was it macro enough for you? I don't know. Let me know down below. Would love to know if you think this is good enough to be your macro lens, or if you would actually have a dedicated macro lens like the 90mm I think it's f2.8 from Sony. I know there's a lot of different other types of macro lenses that Sigma, Tamron, and probably whatever companies have them. So it is what it is, but I'm not that big into macro photography. That's why I got those extension tubes. They're like super cheap, to be honest. So if you're looking to just add macro to your already existing lenses, just look into some extension macro tubes and hopefully it'll help you out to achieve what you want. See, the 17-28 has more macro abilities. I think that's their, I don't want to say their selling point because it's not their selling point, but I used to have the 20mm Tamron. That was pretty macro too. But, you know, if I need to do more macro, I guess I could use the 17-28 with an extension tube if needed. But like I said, it's not that, I'm not that big into macro photography or even videography, but it is kind of nice to have those attention to details when it comes down to, you know, up close and personal videos or photos. But with all that said and done, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Make sure to like and subscribe, share this video with a friend. I'll catch you guys in the next one. See ya.